very like closed community. I mean, you can't choose. I mean, you kind of can, but I feel like senior year it's kind of hard to choose new people to talk to. But I feel like some people just simply don't care, like inadmissible views. They don't care like what you have to talk about. So I feel like I kind of just keep my thoughts to myself because I mean that's where loneliness could come in. But I feel like I take it into other people and other groups outside of school. But other people don't have that opportunity, and I feel like that's where it comes in from, which others find admissible from holding certain views.
What's something that you would want to talk about?
I don't know.
Just a general topic, nothing specific. If you don't want to.
No, I don't know. Nothing comes to my head. But
Anybody? What would like it? You know.
I mean, abortion.
Oh, no, I'll take it. No, I mean, I only asked for general because I wasn't sure if anybody would be okay with saying something specific.
or religion.
Yeah, religion, abortion, religion,
Death.
death,
I mean, no one likes talking about death.
food,
It depends if you find the right people.
gender. Man, the other day I was in a different classroom. It wasn't even this one. It was a different teacher because other teachers teach the same stuff. And I happened, during my prep period, I'll go watch other teachers teach. I was in another class. And that was like the immediate one that someone came up with, thinking about gender. And it's interesting because this is the first class of mine where someone brought this up. And I was thinking it's interesting that the kinds of conversations that I see other classes are willing to have with their teacher are very different from the kinds of conversations that it seems like my students are willing to have with me. And so as I went to leave, the teacher asked me, do you want to talk to them? Nah, yeah, why not? And so I just stood there, and the first thing I remember saying was, genders are like towers, right? Yeah, there used to be 2 of them, and now it's just a really sensitive subject. And I let it sit for a couple seconds, and once I let it sit for a couple seconds, the whole class began laughing, because that was the thing that they were bringing up. Yeah, and so if you had this idea that, so anyway, what was interesting to me was that when I asked the class, when the teacher was talking with the students, and the teacher never gave a view, she just asked them what they thought about things. The whole class essentially was how do I say it? They were not Twitter sensitive, if you know, essentially. Yeah, I think they were making fun of the idea of having like multiple thousands and hundreds of genders and all that. And then there was one girl who raised her hand, and to her credit, her voice was very shaky. She was almost like shaking with her hand. She was trying to breathe as she was talking, and she was kind of defending the idea, saying that about gender expression, saying that when you look in the mirror and it doesn't match who you think that you are, how you see yourself. In other words, you look in the mirror and it doesn't match who you think you are. And so, interestingly, the class afterwards was pretty quiet. Not like cowed into like, oh, we shouldn't say anything. But I was thinking in my head, I wonder if it was reversed. If there was like the one person who said what the majority was saying, I wonder if they'd have gotten the same grace, because they were very kind towards her. And then the class then kind of looks at me like I'm supposed to say something. I'm like, you know? And then they go, well, what would someone say? And so I said, I have a friend who's anorexic. True story. She's anorexic. She's 87 pounds. She's about 2 inches, 3 inches, about 2 inches shorter than me. That's very, very skinny. And I asked, and then she looks at herself and she says, I think I look great. That's how she talks to her. I think I look great. Should I tell her that she looks great? I don't know. It's a real, I mean, that's how she sees herself. Should I look at her and go, you're perfectly healthy. Everything with you is going great as your internal organs shut down? I don't know. I was asking, that was the question I was asking, essentially, are we under any obligation to affirm to people how they see themselves? Now, even just having that conversation, people start getting uncomfortable, we get angry, and then we're like, well, everyone's got their own perspective. Oh yeah, and then we walk away from it, or we just say, oh, it is what it is, and we try to kind of walk away from it. But the idea is that if any of these things are important to you, and how can you, if these things are important to you, then how do you have those conversations when the views if you're in a group of people that seem inadmissible? And by the way, it works kind of the same way. If you're here in San Diego and you say, man, just 2 genders, that's it, and then you'll get dogpiled on. If you go to Alabama and you say, hey man, dozens if not hundreds of genders, you're going to get dogpiled on because of where you are. I'm not saying that we should see it one way or the other. I'm just pointing out that as soon as we shut down conversations, well, I mean, aren't these the kinds of things that are most interesting to talk about? And so this is the point I was getting at. So now, if you go to a party and someone's like, oh, how are you? My name's so-and-so, nice to meet you. No, so tell me about yourself. Well, actually, what do you think about abortion? Like first thing out there, you know? How many genders do you think they are? What's your religion? What do you think happens to us after we die? In other words, all of the really interesting, meaningful conversations that we can have, you see that we'll be in certain areas we just can't have those conversations. And if you're a person who's really into having these deep conversations with people, and you don't have people around you with whom you can have deep, important conversations, well then you can start to feel like you're pretty much the only one. You can feel like you're alone, you're alien, you're isolated. And so what can you do? Well, you can continue just having these kinds of thoughts and these conversations with yourself. Maybe you can find people outside of that immediate group that you can have those conversations with. Or maybe you're the person who just sits there and goes, I don't know, I like to drink, I guess. Or whatever. In other words, you have like a conversation that's more appropriate or more common to the situation, rather than having the conversations you really want to have. Now, again, if you're a person who has these deep ideas, then you're going to find yourself alienated and alone a lot. And I think back, I don't know if I ever told you guys this story, but this was, no, gosh, this is probably 10 years ago now, but I was teaching over at the college, and I was here as well. And I went back home to Los Angeles at one point. And I went to a liquor store to get something to drink, and I was paying, and I heard someone behind me just go, "Scallon?" And I was like, oh shit. Because this can be either good or really, really bad, because I haven't been back home in a while. And I turn, and I see a friend of mine. But I kind of recognized the face. But the face wasn't quite the face I remembered from when I was in high school. That's where this guy's from. His name was Paul Gonzalez. I can say his name because I don't think he knows how to use YouTube. So I turn in, he's wearing like this orange vest, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I recognize, and he goes, "It's Paul, it's Gonzalez. Oh, hey, what's up?" I'm talking to him, and he's just like, so, asking me how life has been and everything. I'm like, oh, everything, here's what I'm doing and all that. So he's like, hey, dude, you should come by tonight. It was a Friday night. And I go, yeah, where are you? He's like, dude, I'm with, it's Friday night. And I'm like, yeah, it's Friday night. He's all, whoa, it is Friday night. And I'm thinking, and he goes, dude, we're at Miguel's house. When I was in high school, we had a friend, Miguel. His mom was that mom who was okay if everyone drank, as long as you just drank at her house so she could keep her eye on you. I don't know if you guys have that. You guys have that parent who's like, it's okay if you drink and do rails of coke, as long as I know you're safe. So that was his mom. So every Friday night after the games, they were football players. Like my peer group were all mostly athletes, baseball players and football players. So the footballers after the games, we do go to their house. I had baseball games on Friday nights also. We go to his house afterwards. And every Friday night, we got together and we partied at Miguel's house. And so I was just thinking like, okay, yeah, I'll come by. But I mean, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, dude, it's been a number of years since high school. And I'm thinking like, you guys still do that. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. You guys are still doing that. So before I left town, I was like, you know what, man? They're not going to miss me. I'm not going to go. And I even drove to his house and I parked a block away. Just in case you have to make a quick getaway. I try not to park in parking lots or anywhere too close, just in case you got to run, And I was talking myself out of going in and saying everybody. But I ended up going, all right. I went out, I walked up, and you can hear everybody inside, and I just open up the front, the screen door, I walk in. As soon as I do that, it's like almost like the music is still playing, and it's the same music from when I was in high school, man. They're still listening to the same music. And all of a sudden, one person turns, and all of a sudden the room starts to go quiet. I was looking, and someone finally just goes, "Scallon, hey!" And I was immediately transferred back into that time period. It's like nothing had changed. We're sitting around, we're talking. They're asking me, so what I'm doing these days. And so I said, oh, I'm teaching, high school teaching over to college. And one person goes, you're teaching. Don't you have to go to college for that? And I said, yeah, I go to college. And someone was like, how did you go to college? Because they remembered me. This is a good thing about having old friends. They remind you who you used to be. As long as you only let it remind you who you used to be, not who you are today. And so they were like, dude, don't you, but you didn't you have like straight F's or something? I go, they weren't straight F's. It was a 1.8. I did graduate. And then they're like, man, I remember the time that you, and they start reminding me about all this, like, some stupid stuff I had done. So they're like, so you went to college. What college did you go to? I said, I went to UCLA. And they're like, no, seriously? And it occurred to me how fast that division happened, I guess, between high school and college, such that as soon as I left high school, they had no recollection. Oh, I'm sorry, they had no understanding of what my life turned into after that. Their life was exactly the same as it was. They were all working jobs that were not like, were not menial jobs, but nothing high-end. Some construction. One person worked for the city, doing like road stuff. Miguel, he was an interesting case in that he had 3 DUIs, but he was a Pechanga Indian, and so he got money every month from the casino out in Temecula, just free money. So, and his mom, and it turns out in that interim, she had died. And she had this old house, it was paid off, so the guy had a paid off house, he got money every month from the Indian reservation, and he wanted to be a personal trainer, but he was not of the correct dimensions to be a personal trainer. He's a big fat dude. And his thing was just he was strong, so he thought that he could become a personal trainer teaching people how to get strong. He couldn't do that. So these were all of their jobs. So then they're like, so you went to school, they're all, so you got a degree. I said, yeah, I got a degree. Now, what's your degree? And I said, I just, no big deal. And they're like, well, what, come on, dude, what, seriously, man, what is it? They're all bullshit, you didn't even get one. That's when they try to, antagonize you into saying something. So I said, I got 1 bachelor's degree in English literature. I did a specialization in Victorian literature and culture. I did another bachelor's degree in philosophy. I did a specialization in political, moral, and ethical theories. I did a master's degree in critical reasoning. I did another master's degree in administration, essentially to run schools. And then my PhD is it's a joint degree with psychology and philosophy. And then my specialization was in, again, with moral ethical theories. And they look at me and they dead quiet. And one guy just goes, fucking Dr. Scanlon? I said, yeah, Dr. Scanlon. And they're like, oh my God, how could that be? I remember when you, and again, they go on, they start telling all these really silly stories about me from way back when. And I was way less comfortable. I mean, I was uncomfortable at the time when I went back in school, and it was even more so now. And I'm looking at them, and as the evening goes on, they drink more, and eventually it becomes like, so how come you haven't come to visit us? You're too important for us now, or you think you're better than us? And the whole tone of the room changes over the course of the rest of the evening because they're frustrated and angry that I haven't visited in all of this time. And it must be because there's something wrong with how I think of them. Why didn't I go visit them? I told you why. I was busy doing a bunch of other things. And school was only a fraction of everything I was doing. And of course, they were busy doing exactly the same things that they had always done. They had never grown. Since they were 18 years old until early they had never grown. And they were exactly, and I imagine if I went back on Friday night today, I would still find them at his house doing the exact same thing, even these years later. So I remember I ended up leaving, got in my car, got in Mr. Truck, and I was driving thinking, holy shit, I don't belong there anymore. Like, where I grew up, I don't belong there anymore. And I remember that was on a Friday night again, because, Friday. And then on Monday, I had a faculty meeting over at the college, and I was sitting in a room with a bunch of professors, looking around and interacting with them, and I was realizing at that time, holy shit, I don't belong here either. Because their stories about how they got to where they are all very different from mine. All of them, they graduated, went top of their class, did this and that, and then here they are in this room together talking like this, talking like they're not real people. Many of them have never seen like a B movie. Many of them, never, I don't know, whatever, passed out in a gutter somewhere. Many of them never had these real life human experiences. Most of them went through school, went to college, got a degree, and then got hired as a professor, and that's their whole life experience. They never did anything else, and yet they're teaching people about life. And I was looking around just thinking like, I don't belong here either. And I walked out of that meeting thinking, so I don't belong at home. I don't belong here where I ended up. So now I guess the question is, where exactly do you belong? Because the views that I would go back and talk to my friends about, they're not really admissible there. The things I'd go back and talk to the professor about, they're not really admissible there. I guess you can fit in some niche way by forcing yourself to fit in somewhere. But it's not the full embodiment of who you are. And so you have to kind of forge forward somehow, and that can be you. And what I'm saying is that many of you are going to experience something like this, especially if you go off to school, and then you're going to be transformed. You're going to come back and you're going to have some other things on your mind. You're going to be wanting to talk about other things. And many of your friends are not going to be able to do that, or not want to do that even. Maybe you won't even be able to communicate these things to them because the things that you learned about and where your mind is at that point is so far beyond that, it feels like regression to go back and try to start from the beginning and talk to them about these things. And let's face it, if they were interested in the first place, they probably would have done the same thing as well. And it isn't a matter that you're any better than that, because you're not. I don't care how many degrees you get, man. I don't care what you do in your life. You are no better than anybody. And I'm talking about there is no teacher here who's better intrinsically than any student, and there's no student who's intrinsically better than any other teacher. In terms of our actual value as human beings, we should be kind to each other because none of us is better than anybody else. There's no reason to try to elevate yourself above in these ways. Maybe you're going to do more than other people. Maybe you'll get more letters after your name or something like that, but that doesn't make you any kind of effective. A lot of times it gets in the way of you being a good person. It interferes with you being a good person. You know, you get a whole bunch of money, it becomes difficult to be a good person. Not impossible, but difficult. You know, and we oftentimes think like if I can just get these things in my life will be easier. In certain dimensions, in other dimensions it becomes harder. And that's one of them. This thing of isolation. If maybe, you know, as isolated as you feel right now, it can get worse. Now, it doesn't have to. And if you go to school, then you're going to probably find people who are like-minded. It's just like I said a few minutes ago, some of you guys are weirdos. But if you go to a concert, you're not the weirdo anymore. The security guard's the weirdo, because he's just dressed normal. Everybody else is dressed, you know, in some other way that they look like the band. And all of a sudden now, you're not alone. You're now joined together with a whole bunch of people. And that's the beauty of art and music. It allows you, here in San Diego, to travel to, I don't know, Florida or Paris or Bogota. And if you're wearing a t-shirt for a band, somebody else sees that t-shirt and they're a fan also, you're now instantly connected in a way that you never would have been before. You don't even have to say words. You can just look at each other, both wearing similar shirts, and just like, you know? And so this is the beauty of art. It brings us together in these ways so that we don't have to feel so damn alone all the time. I don't know if any of you guys, if there's, I don't know, maybe there's a song or something that is about you, like an artist, you know? Like it's not about, I mean, you never met them before. Maybe they've been dead for 20 years or whatever, but you still know the song is about you because it's too damn clearly reflective of your life to not be about you. You know, maybe you've never met that person before, but somehow you're connected to them because you realize that there's a shared human experience. And the ability to make those kinds of connections, those shared human experiences, is exactly this thing here. Being able to communicate the things that are important to you, or at least they seem important to you. And once you can make these things that are important to you manifest in the world in a way that other people can understand them as well, now you're connecting with people. It's like, I don't know if there's anybody in your life who you listen to them talk. You just like listening to them talk. I have a former professor who's like this, Professor Richards. I just like listening to Richards talk. I used to sit there, and I don't care what the guy says. He can start talking about how we need to, I don't know, make paper airplanes out of the blinds and the windows. And I'd be over there pulling the thing down like, how do we do that? Let's make this happen. Yeah, there's something in the way that he talks that's unusual. It's powerful. It's insightful. It's articulate, but it's also true. There's something about it. Maybe you can't put your finger on it. Those are the people in your life who are going to be incredibly important to you because they're going to show you that there is a clearer way to express yourself and to be known. You know, it's one of the beautiful things about, like I said, about reading writers. I've read Carl Jung, a whole bunch of Carl Jung. I know Carl Jung. If he walked in here right now, I could sit down and have a long conversation with Carl Jung because I know him. I know his life. I've read it. Shit, he has a book called The Red Book where he talks about slipping into almost a psychosis where he goes crazy because of the ideas that he's thinking about. And he talked about how he's able to come out on the other end of it and how he did all that. He journaled the entire time. It wasn't like afterwards he said, let me explain how I did this. He's going through all of these things. And I can read what he's writing and I can say, ooh, I've been there. Hey, even though this thing was written in 1949, were you watching my life right there? Because that's exactly something I went through. And so it creates this connection. And then of course, art is a way of doing it as well. Music, it can be so incredibly articulate. It can explain things so clearly. Maybe that's the reason that you like an artist. Because you just like listening to them talk over a track, sing, whatever. Even talk with a guitar over a track, whatever it is. And it gives you a sense of communication so that, again, you don't feel so goddamn alone all the time. Because that's where that sense of loneliness comes from. It comes from having, not from having nobody around. Some of you, I'm sure, like, you're never alone, but you're alone all the time. You know? There's this great song. I hate calling it a great song because I hate the band. The band's called Bush. I hate Bush. But they have a song called Glycerin. And it's an absolutely beautiful song. It's just a guitar, and it's an electric guitar, actually, not even an acoustic guitar. Electric guitar and a vocal. And it's about a girl. It's about a relationship, actually, a relationship that goes bad. And you know what nitroglycerin is?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you put it together. What happens if you put nitroglycerin together? Boom! Huge. So she's glycerin, so that must mean he's the nitro. So you put those two things together in a relationship, and they absolutely explode. If you listen to this song, he fucking loves her. There's no doubt about this whatsoever. And he's got this great line in there where he says, exactly what I just quoted, I'm never alone, but I'm alone all the time. But he's got this, I mean, it's an incredibly gut-wrenching song when you listen to him. And obviously he's the other half of that when they come together, they explode. And there's just something where you sit there and you're like, God, how come like you two love each other so much, but you can't make it work? There's something that when you come together, you explode. But everything else seems to be like it's right where it should be. And if you've ever, I don't know if any of you have experienced that yet. At some point in your life, you might. And you can look at that and go, man, how did Gavin, that's the guy's name, the singer, how did Gavin know this from like 1995 or something like that, whatever year the song is. Way before I was even born. How could this guy even know what I was going to go through, such that he wrote a song about it? You know, it's a beautiful song, and it's hard to listen to that if you've experienced those things before and have it communicated in a way that you can understand it and not feel like a human connection to the people around you. And in that, even though it's melancholy, which it is, it's very melancholy, the song, it's a very melancholy song, and yet it can still uplift you because now, at least you're not alone. You know, at least you're not alone because someone can articulate the things, communicate the things that seem important to you. You know? And forget even having like the views that are inadmissible. Of course, that would be an inadmissible view. So you're talking about a toxic relationship. Yeah, but shut up. You know, hear what it's about. It's toxic in 2022, but there's also something that's just tragic about it as well. That you can have such a deep connection to a person and have it still not work. Because if you can't make it work with a person with a deep connection, now you start to ask that question of like, how could you possibly make it work with anybody? You know, and of course then you turn it on yourself and you're like, wow, so maybe there's something wrong with me. Is there something wrong with you? Yes. Is there something wrong with the other person? Yes. Is there something wrong with the next person and the next person? Yes, all the way down, as far down as you can go, all yeses. And that's part of the thing, is that there's something wrong with everybody. That doesn't mean that there's something irredeemable about any of us. Everybody deserves to be redeemed. Everybody deserves forgiveness to some extent. Everyone deserves to experience the positive sides of glycerin. You know, but for some reason, the things that make us feel happy are also the things that lead us straight headlong into harm. And that's what he's talking about here. And so if you haven't been there yet, hold on. Put the song in your phone and just wait. And then if you have felt it, you'll listen to it and you'll just think like, okay, I get it. And that's just one thing, of course. But the point is that the more you grow, the more that you kind of grow away from some people and towards others. It's exciting. It's also sad, because both of those things can be equally true. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.
Will someone ever find their like place where they feel they belong, or they're gonna be like forever stay on?
See, that's the kind of question that had us go an hour and 13 minutes in second period today. Can you ever find those places? The first thing that you have to do is know yourself and figure out where you fit in with everything. And by the way, that's a really hard thing to do, to know yourself. Because that means that you're going to have to dig into the dark parts of yourself that you don't want to. Because one thing, I won't make you many promises, but I will promise you this is absolutely true, man. The things that you need to find are going to be found in the places that you least want to look. Try that again. The things that you need to find in your life, you're going to find them in the places that you least want to look. Which are the things that are inside. Why am I the way that I am? Why am I doing these things that I'm doing? And it's a really uncomfortable place to look. But I mean, let's face it though, if it was obvious, if it was easy to find, it wouldn't be valuable either. It wouldn't tell you much. It's like you don't walk around in the forest somewhere and just go, huh, gold. You have to go digging for it. Same with diamonds. You don't just walk around and trip over a big giant diamond and go, oh my goodness, a big giant diamond. You have to find those things that are precious. You have to go digging. And the things that you need to find in your life. And by the way, the things that you need in your life are going to be very different from the things that you want in your life, probably. Probably. In other words, you think about the things that you want, and then think about if you do get them. It's a fictional account, of course, but I like to talk about Scarface, the end of the movie. If you've seen the movie, he's sitting in this restaurant. He's achieved not even achieved. He has surpassed all of his dreams. And he's sitting in this restaurant. He's looking around, and he's miserable. And he just asks this question, is this it? This is what it's all about? This is what I was pursuing? He got everything he wanted. He got nothing that he needed. If you're able to find the things that you want and they line up and they're exactly the things that you need, which happens sometimes, you'll still fuck it up. Those are the tragedies of life. When what you want and what you need line up and we still fail to capitalize on them, which happens sometimes. Those are the tragedies in life. Those are the things that stay with you the longest, probably. But when they do line up and you're wise enough to hold on to them and nurture them, then those will be some of the greatest things of your life as well. Some of the greatest memories of your life. I was talking to last period, I think it was. I think it was second period. No, I won't talk about that. I made a short clip of it. It's the most important moment. Why not? Say it again. I think back to one of the greatest memories of my life. I guess it was. It's a weird thing. I was at home and I was with a friend of mine, and I wanted cake. You know about my love for cake. And I looked at her and I said, I want cake. And she's like, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. It's so creepy. I was just thinking I want cake. So I'm like, well, let's go get cake. It was like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. There was a supermarket not too far away that's not true. It is kind of far away. And we just kind of said, let's go get cake. So we went and got cake at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. That's it. That's the memory. That's it. I was contrasting it last period, telling them about how I was in a band at one point, and we opened up, there's a band called the Misfits, if you know who the Misfits are. I was on tour with the Misfits. And I remember standing on a stage at one point in front of 7,000 people, 5,000 people, and doing exactly what I've been working my whole life to do, to be a musician, standing exactly where I wanted to stand, looking out the audience with a microphone and saying to myself, is this it? This is what it's all about? Yeah? Why is it that kind of a thing didn't nourish my soul in the exact same way that walking through a market at 10 o'clock at night, grabbing some red velvet cake, why is it that was so much more meaningful to me? I don't know, maybe because the thing that I wanted, being on that stage, wasn't the thing that I needed, which was the simple life. I don't know. We'll find out someday. So the question of, can you ever do that? Yeah, but you got to sort yourself out. And once you sort yourself out, I got bad news. You gotta find somebody else who sorted themselves out too. Or at least enough so that you can make it work. You know? I was just thinking about a few years ago at my house. I'm not making fun of anybody, just hear me out. I saw this dude who was, I think they worked for AT&T. They were working on the telephone poles, and there was a guy who had like some kind of like palsy where like he shook a lot, you know? And he was like kind of like walking, and he was like kind of shaking in this way. And he was wearing the vest, and I'm thinking like, my goodness, is this the guy you want on top of a ladder going up a pole? And then there's a guy who was with him who was on crutches, and but the brace kind. It wasn't like his leg was broken temporarily. The guy could not walk, and he was like on these crutches where he just moved. And so they get somehow these two guys with their disabilities. They get the ladder out of the van, and I'm watching them. And I'm thinking I could offer to help, but no, I want to see how this plays out in real life. And so after a few long and uncomfortable minutes, they finally get the ladder thing like up on the pole, and it doesn't go all the way up. And I'm like, how is this? I want to know who's going up, who's holding what. Turns out the guy who's shaking, he's going to hold the ladder. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be wonderful. And then the guy whose legs are all messed up, you know, he gets this harness thing, and he starts to go up the ladder, and he's like crawling out of it like this, you know, going up it. And he wraps his strap around the pole, and then he uses that to climb himself up the top, and then he latches it, and he goes back like this, like he's going to fall, because he lost his balance, but the thing held him on. And I watched these guys work on this pole after, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour. Yes, I watched the entire time. Before you give me too much shit, you've been watching me for 40 minutes. That was way more interesting than I am. And eventually they gets back down the pole, they put the ladder back inside the van, and then the guy with the braces on his arms, he drives. Thank goodness, right? But yeah, I'm guessing the van must have been somehow specially equipped so he could drive. I looked at that and I said, God damn, dude, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor right there, isn't it? That's a perfect relationship. Two jacked up people who somehow complement each other, and they make it work, and they get the job done. I guess that's what you want to find. Someone who's jacked up in different ways. So again, we're all messed up, but somehow their messed upness complements your messed upness, and somehow you make it work. Others? Yes.
I feel like there's just, I don't know, the proper way to figure out who you are. Like, I mean, you could dig down deep. It's like, really, how do you do that?
To figure out who you are? One of the ways, unfortunately, I don't... It'll be me talking to you. The way that you find out who you are is you have to experience life. You have to put yourself in experiences. You don't know who you are until you see how you respond to things. You guys know what The Onion is?
What?
The Onion? I think it's from The Onion. It's a parody news. It's not real. It's not real news. It's supposed to be funny. They did a report one time, and they said the average male, turns out, is 4,000 times less effective in a street fight than they think they're going to be. And they're interviewing these guys. These guys are like, man, you don't even understand. When I get pissed, I just see red. It's just like, boom, boom, it's on. And then they're like, making fun of it as they go. And the idea is, have any of those guys ever been in a street fight? I don't know. But I imagine not, because if so, you wouldn't be talking like that. How are you going to respond when someone punches you in the face? You can find out. Go out in the hallway, sign a waiver, I'll punch you in the face, and we'll see how you're going to react. How are you going to react when someone is needling on you and pushing your buttons? Well, you won't know until you do it. And this is how you find out who you are in certain ways. Now, there are everyday little things, like if you're in traffic and you find that you're constantly road raging and getting frustrated, then now you know you're a person who's easily frustrated. but you have to be able to reflect on that. And it's easy to say, no, I'm not easily frustrated, it's just that people are so stupid. Well, yeah. So, I mean, really, everyone's that stupid? I mean, my goodness, if everyone you meet is stupid, there's a problem with where you're hanging out. Because even if you're just looking like a standard, normal deviant, most of the population should be average intelligence. So maybe the problem is not with other people, maybe it's with you and how it is that you're perceiving drivers. And like, for example, I have a friend of mine who just road rages constantly. And then when things, like when she cuts somebody else off, it's like, oh, my bad. But if somebody cuts her off, she just flips her. Fine, go ahead. It's not like I was driving here. Dude, I'm like, actually, I don't talk to her while she drives because I don't make it worse because I could die alongside of her. So I'm going to be reasonable about it. But you find out who you are when you're in situations. Like you can theoretically think things through and you can know who you are in terms of your ideas. But my first year as a teacher, I was talking to a 10th grade class. And there was a girl in the class. Let's see. There's a girl in the class who was 17. Most sophomores are like 15. So she was 2 years older than most of them. And it was funny because she was always like fixing her makeup and everything. And so back then we had rules against like cell phones and mirrors and stuff like that. And so I remember one day she had a phone and she was using the camera phone on it to like fix her makeup. So I confiscated the phone. A little while later she had another one. And so I confiscated that one. I was like, what the hell? How many phones do you have? So she ends up leaving. And the bell rings, and rather than coming up to me and asking her for her phones back, she jumps up and she takes off. And I'm just like, all right, I guess I'll keep the phones. And then these two dudes come up to me. Hey, Scanlon, can we have our phones back? I'm like, those were your phones? Yeah. Why did you give her your phones? And they're like, because she's really pretty. Like, all right, okay, fine. Anyway, so fast forward like maybe a month and a half or so, and I gave this talk one time about how someday you're all going to be ugly because you're going to get old. Not you guys. I mean, not me, just you guys. You guys will all be ugly. And so she comes up to me at one point. She asked if she can talk to me outside. I said sure. So I go outside, and she just says to me, "Scanlon, I've become ugly." I'm like, okay, what do you mean by this? Anyone guess what she meant by this?
Her personality.
What's that?
Her personality.
Her personality? Her looks were about to go out the window. They really were. What's that?
The makeup.
Makeup. She's going to have to give up the makeup soon, too. She got pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah, and she just said, I don't know what to do. The boyfriend went here, too. And again, this is my first year as a teacher. My first semester as a teacher. And she just says, I don't know what to do. And she's talking about the pros and the cons, and she just looks at me and she goes, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. Should I have an abortion or should I have the baby? No pressure. I looked at her and I just said, I want you to do what makes you happy. No, I did not. I did not. I didn't give her really any advice at all. I talked to her, asked her a bunch of questions, and then got her talking herself. And the thing was that she didn't want to have an abortion. She wanted, she didn't want to have the baby either, but it was like, I want to have a baby, like down here on the list of things that she wanted to do, and the abortion just happened to be lower than that, is what it really was. And she just realized that her whole life was going to change with this. And so she ended up having the baby and ended up in the learning center to finish and all that stuff. And that was kind of that. And then you fast forward a few years after that, and I'm teaching over at college, and I'm looking at the class, and I recognize her. She's in my class. And I was like, oh. And so she comes to me after, and she's like, hey, Scanlon, how are you? And I got to talking to her. Her life was dramatically different. She was telling me a story about how she was engaged at that time. And the way she got engaged was that she finished here at the Learning Center. She went to Southwestern, and then she met a guy in that class. And she's like, and he reminds me of you. He's like very serious all the time. And I thought that was funny. Like, when you think about me, do you think about someone who's very serious all the time? I wouldn't think so. But that tells you something. Because my first year as a teacher and my second year as a teacher, I wore shirt and tie every day. So that's probably how, so this was how she came to perceive me this way. Very differently, as anyway, at least very different from how I see myself anyway. And so she says that she meets this guy, and she thinks he's really cute, and so she's like, leans over and she's like, hey, let's go hang out, let's ditch class and hang out. And the guy said to her, no, I'm here for class. And he went into the class. And she was like, what the hell? And she's telling me, yeah, I've never had a guy say no to me before. I go, well, first time, right? And so then she's like, she said it pissed her off at first. Like, who the hell does he think he is saying? And she's like, but that intrigued her. So she would still talk to him in class, and then she kept asking him to go out. And finally, I guess he said to her that he has a plan for his life, and he can't be taken off of that track. And essentially his plan was to finish school, go to join the border patrol, have a degree, so that he can move up in the ranks and become a commander and have like a career in that, like at the upper ranks, not the lower ranks, but the upper ranks. And so he said to her, I'm not interested in dating, I'm interested in finding a wife, because I'm going to have someone by my side throughout all of this, and I need to have someone who can make me better and who I can make better. And then he said to her, it seems like your life is mostly geared towards partying and screwing around, but no offense, but that's not what I want to raise my children someday. Yeah, and this dude, by the way, he's like 19 at this time, 20 is my guy. And so she said it just blew her away, so she got to thinking about it. So she said that she wanted to prove to him that she could be serious. Not like to win him over, but like as a fuck you to him. You think you know me? So she said she started studying, and she's like, and Scott, you're never going to believe this. When I started studying, guess what happened? I said, did you get good grades? She said, I got good grades. And all of a sudden, she started to see her life in this way, like, I don't have to be who I am. I actually have options in my life that I could do these other things. And of course, she had, her son, and I guess he was like, whatever he was at the time, like 3 or 4, whatever he was. And so anyway, the two of them stayed in contact, and her life completely changed. They got engaged, and then they got married. And they're together today. She does real estate. He did do exactly what he said he's going to do. And I don't know if it's 2 or 3 children. I think it's 3. I think 2 or 3 children. But I still talk to her today. And it's incredible to see how like this life and she's still just like, she flies off the handle really fast about stuff, and he's very calm. She brought him to meet me one time, and like we shook each other's hand, and he just kind of goes, you're scaling out here. So you're almost finished with school. Yeah, you finished it. Good to meet you. And that was like the whole extent of our conversation. And then it was funny because she was in my class at the time, so like a week later or whatever it was, she's like, oh my God, you bet, what'd you think? I go, he seems okay. She's like, he would not shut up about how interesting he thought you were. I'm not bullshitting you. That was the whole conversation. Hey, so you finished school, and that was the whole thing. But why? Why did he like me? I communicated in a language he understood. Hands in the pockets, quiet. You get a sense of it. And the thing is, and the funny thing is, I said to her, he's a good dude. Keep this one. This one's going to be loyal to you. This one's going to take care of you. How did I know that? I don't know. I just got a strong sense of it. Because he communicated in such a way that, I don't know, it came off this way. Bring it back. She knows herself. But she knows herself enough to know that she needs someone who can recenter her like that. It's hard to know yourself. It's hard to find somebody else who knows you. And it's hard to find that compliment in those ways. The thing is, you have to have experiences in life. She had some significant experiences in her life that made her who she is, continues to shape her into who she is. I know, you think I'm just stretching here to bring it back to center. I'm not. There's a plan. You have to go through some of these things, like the tragedies, because that's how you know how you're going to respond. Again, one of my degrees is in philosophy. I did a specialization in the political, moral, ethical theories. I have read more about abortion than 99% of the world, probably, and the issues around it, personhood, all that. All that went out the window when I was standing in front of a 17-year-old who was asking me what she should do with her with her baby and said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. All of that theoretical stuff went out the window as soon as there was a real human experience in front of you. The theoretical stuff helped prepare me to have that and to have that exchange. But the human experience is so much different. You can study the heck out of everything in life, but until you experience it, you don't know how you're going to behave in that situation. And so this is why I tell people, if you ever find yourself saying, man, I would never fill in the blank, get ready. Because you're about to. You're about to. Man, I would never do this. You're about to do it. I would never betray someone. You're about to do it. Because the things that you think you would never do are the things that you're least likely to protect yourself against. And then that's probably where you're going to be most vulnerable. Now maybe you want to be vulnerable in those areas, and that kind of gives you an out to go ahead and do it. But there's no substitute for experience. Reading is great. There's more to books, and there's more to life than books. Not much more, but there's a lot more to life than just books. That's when that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the professors. They didn't, they had never been in a bar fight. They had never seen crappy movies. They had never, I don't know, dipped Oreos in caramel sauce or something. I don't know. The kinds of normal life experience that people would have, they were above that kind of stuff. And that means they haven't lived the fullness of life. Should you eat caviar? I should try it, I guess. Should you dip Oreos in crappy, not even caramel, but caramel flavored syrup? Yeah, why not try it? What's better, a cheeseburger or a ribeye? Yes. I guess it depends on the context, depends on where it is. But you won't know until you try stuff. And this is why it's so important to try things, especially the things in your life that you that frighten you. Like, why should you? You want to do it, but then you're like, I shouldn't. Why not? Maybe you shouldn't, by the way. If you have a fork and you're like, I should stick this in the electrical socket. No, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. Because there are certain things in life that if you try it, you might not walk away from it. You're out there hiking and you see a bear and you're like, maybe not. Maybe not. Because there are things that can end your life, but there are also things that can multiply it. And you won't know them until you try them. And there will be experiences in your life that you're going to be like, I should try this. And then afterwards you're going to be like, you shouldn't have done that, man. But you don't know until you've tried it. And then when you're limping away, that story's going to be funny later. Remember that time when and then afterwards you were limping away? Yeah, dude, that's right, I remember that. I want to add one last thing about the red velvet cake. What made that experience so wonderful is that I knew at the moment it was a great experience. As I'm walking through the supermarket, I'm like, this is a lot of fun, this is great, I'm going to remember this experience. Even if this person leaves my life someday, they haven't. But even if this person has left my life even if this person leaves my life someday, this experience right now is going to be something I'll remember. Not in retrospect, not like, oh, I remember that one time no, you remember it at the time as great. And then later on you recall it as great. That's what separates those things. So, anyway, others?
Great talk.
I don't know. We'll see. I hope it's not more than an hour.